My favorite action star is Charles Bronson. He was pretty big in the 1970s and 80s. You could say he was kind of the first expendable. He's dead now, but if he was still alive, I'm pretty sure he'd be in the Expendables movies. And he would be in his 90s, but he would still be in them. And my favorite movie of his is called Murphy's Law. It came out in 1986. Let me explain a little about who Charles Bronson was. He was a character actor in the 1950s and 60s, and originally, before he made big, he went under the name Charles Buczynski, and then he changed it to Bronson. And he made a couple of westerns in the 50s when he was still under Buczynski. And in the early 60s, he got his big break by being one of the Magnificent Seven. And then he went on to other movies. The Great Escape, also starring Steve McQueen of the Magnificent Seven. And then he was in Dirty Dozen with Lee Marvin. And then he made... And the movie that made him big was a spaghetti western called Once Upon a Time in the West, from the director of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and essentially part of that film series. Bronson took over Clint Eastwood's role of the man with no name. And despite all that, he didn't really become a huge star in the US until 1974 when he made a movie called Death Wish. And Death Wish was a major, huge success. It was made at a time when crime in New York City was pretty bad and pretty rampant. Like, people were afraid to go out in the streets. There were muggings, killings, a lot of horrible crimes. And this movie, made around that time period, he plays a average man who is a pacifist, pretty liberal, has a great family, wife, daughter, son-in-law, and then one day his wife and daughter are attacked by some muggers who kill his wife and rape his daughter. And now that something like this has happened to him, his whole view on crime changes, and he decides that if the cops can't protect people, then maybe the people should. And he becomes a vigilante. And although vigilantism is not a good thing, this movie does it well as an action film. It's more of a drama with some action to it, and he plays a vigilante that you can sympathize with, because you understand what he's going. You grow attached. You understand him. You grow attached to him. You learn to understand his character. And he's a normal guy who just had a horrible thing happen to him. And he essentially goes out and starts killing with a gun any mugger he sees, hurting an innocent person. And this movie is what made Charles Bronson a superstar. But also essentially, it kind of typecast him in the role of a tough, gruff old man. He was 52 when he made this, and he pretty much played either vigilantes or cops that did what they wanted, whether it was like in the law or not. And one of his movies called 10 to Midnight, his character says, "Forget what's legal and do what's right." And he made all these movies, and I love pretty much all of them. He's my favorite action star. I think he's the greatest. And he was just kick-ass, badass. Like, you did not want to fuck with Bronson. But out of all of them, my personal favorite is Murphy's Law. And even though it's not as well made as Death Wish or that well known or well regarded, I think it is his greatest film in my opinion. It is the most enjoyable, and it I really I feel I really love the characters in this movie. His character and the supporting cast. Murphy's Law. The catchphrase was, "They set him up, he takes them down." And the premise of this movie is that he's a cop named Jack Murphy who's an alcoholic and divorced and depressed over his wife leaving him to become a stripper and live with the guy who runs the strip club. He just drinks himself into a bad place where he can't even be a good cop. And one of the many things that happens to him in this movie, his car is stolen by this is a woman right here, played by Kathleen Wilhoit, I think that's how you pronounce her name, and she plays a car thief named Arabella McGee. And in the very opening, and she steals his car and he arrests her, and at the same time he is being hunted by a former criminal who he put away years ago. And this criminal, a very sadistic and deadly woman, sets him up for murder, and it seems like he could be going to jail. And then he ends up being put in the cell with the very car thief he arrested and handcuffed together. He has them escape and they go on the run, and even though she initially hates him and he can't stand her, they work together to prove his innocence. And along the way, she kind of starts to grow an attraction to him. And as a side to all that, he's also being hunted by the mob, who he has really pissed off. I love this movie. I give it 9.8 out of 10. It is just my personal favorite Bronson movie of all time. I love it, and I enjoy it every time I see it. I get a tingly feeling, and it's a perfect film to watch with him, because he was he was about 66 when he made Murphy's Law, and he was at that age where in the next few years you could start to see him showing signs of getting too old. I don't think he could ever get too old, but you could see the age getting to him. But this was a good point where he's old but still full of energy, and he's still able to take down people half his age or younger than half his age. There's a great scene where he goes to a mobster and threatens him, saying he's going to take him and his family down. And the mobster says, "You ever heard of Murphy's Law? Anything that can go wrong will go wrong." And Bronson says, "The only law I know is Murphy's Law, and that is don't fuck with Jack Murphy." The way he says that is just so badass. And you know you do not want to fuck with Charles Bronson under any role he's in. And the movie is more comedy than the usual Bronson film. Like most of his movies are pretty dark and pretty disturbing. They usually have a lot of rape involved, a lot of savage killings, and the whole premise is usually the bad guys will get their comeuppance at his hands. But this film, although it does have some very brutal scenes, it also has some good comedy scenes that can make you laugh, and like a great I'm not going to tell every funny scene, but there's a funny scene where the thief, Arabella, offers to make him a sandwich and he says no mayonnaise, and she goes, everybody likes mayonnaise, and he says, I don't like mayonnaise. And I like that because I hate mayonnaise, so maybe it's just because finally someone else who hates mayonnaise, I think it's disgusting. And as for Kathleen Wilhoit, she does a very good job as the leading lady in this movie. Her character, the car thief, is pretty much a woman child. She's foul-mouthed. She kind of acts like a immature brat, but she's got kind of a rugged charm that I just like. And she does a great acting job in this role, and it just works out. Some of the things, like her character every 5 minutes is always spewing some kind of insult or crude joke. Like, she has probably over 100 crude insults in this film. Like, some of them were, you snuck-licking donkey fart, or blow it out your ass sperm bank. And those may be stupid, but when you see her do it, it's fucking hilarious. It's an 80s movie, so some of the things are stuff people probably wouldn't do today. Like, there's a few gay insults, such as she calls people like homo and faggot, but at the same time, I think it's because it's a movie of the times, and it didn't bother me too much, and it didn't ruin the film for me. I love it, and it's funny, and I think it just worked because it's part of the times. Like 48 Hours with Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy. How Nick Nolte is racist at times to Eddie Murphy, calling him racial slurs like watermelon, spear chucker, and nigger. But he still had enough likable qualities that you didn't totally hate him, and he could still carry the film in a good way. Bronson himself gets into the homophobic language, calling her a dyke at one point. But once again, the characters aren't horrible. I just think it's part of the times. Like, people were more open to using that language then, and people didn't see it as hurtful and offensive as we do today. And I hate those words, but when used in movies, there can be many contexts to those things, and for here, it's not a huge thing. Overall, it's not a major thing. She has hundreds of other much worse insults. Just crude, maybe not worse, but just a bunch of fucking crude insults. Like asshole, fart, fucker, just bitch, a lot of fucking words. I can't remember all of them, but they were just whoa. And Kathleen Wilhoit was about 22 or 24 when she made this, and Bronson was 66. And May December romances are usually a hard thing to portray right in movies, but in this Murphy's Law, they don't really have a huge romance subplot in this film. Moreover, they hate each other at the start, and he kind of grows on her, and I guess she kind of sees him as a friend at first, but the way they take it, and it doesn't get too extreme, but it's the scenes they have where they really start to warm up to each other, just adorable, cute, and they're just so much fun to watch. And watch it yourself and you'll see what I mean. And you, in this case, the huge fucking age gap of over 40 years did not bother me. It did not. I thought it worked. And the villains in this movie, they're pretty good. One is better than the other, but they're great. The main villain is a killer that Jack Murphy put away many years ago, and the killer, I think I just said the killer is a woman. Yes, well, either way, I'm saying it now. The main villain in this film is a woman, which is a rare for action films, and it's pretty cool to see a psychotic, evil, just ruthless female killer. And the actress Carrie Snodgrass does an amazing job as the film's main antagonist. She is scary and never stops doing these horrible things, and you hate her. And what she does, like, she is a master of disguise. She is manipulative and very intelligent, and she's also a bodybuilder, so she's very strong. And there are scenes where the killing she does, you understand why she's doing them, because of getting revenge on the people who put her in prison. Then there are scenes that show that she will kill anybody if she just feels like it, because she is evil. The other main villain in this film is the mobster character, played by I forget his name, and it's not here. Richard, I know his first name is Richard, but the other main villain, the mobster that Bronson is after, he's more of a goofy villain. Like, he's the laughable villain. Like, he's kind of a stuck up, full of himself, rich guy who's used to getting his way, and he acts all tough. But there's a scene where Bronson just does his thing, where he beats the shit out of him, and the guy just cripples up, crying like a big, soft piece of bitch shit. And you're just glad, and you're surprised. It's surprising when you first see it, the levels that they take the humiliation of the bad guy and showing just what a pathetic wimp he really is. But it's cool, and with all Bronson films, you see stuff you wouldn't normally see in the movies. And the action scenes are great. There's explosions, there's gunfight, there's helicopter flying scenes, and the machine guns, pistols, all kinds of those guns. And it has everything. And this is my all-time favorite Charles Bronson movie. I fucking love it. And I recommend people see it. And it's a little hard to find now. Like, I hate it when this happens. Some movies that go out of stock, and you just don't get, why are they going out of stock? But if you can find a good enough copy for a reasonable price, check this out. I love it. I don't know if everyone else will. I'm probably one of the few that considers it his favorite Bronson film, but it's my personal favorite. And I wish I could think of more to say, but right now that's what I have to say. And this has been my attempt at a video review. Hope it was good.